We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. If you want to donate to this college football's Rebel Outpost, just hit the $sign where you make a comment and I'll get to super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend. With your comments in the chat room, with your phone calls, later in the show, the SEC, the Southeastern Conference, the SEC, ESPN, they are mad. They are mad. Holy smokes. They are mad about the college football playoff rankings that came out last night. And they are. And they are. I'm going to give you a little bit of evidence that they are. So I'm on vacation this week, as I reported to you all last week. The wife is in Iowa. I'm taking a mental break. My brothers and sisters are coming over, taking care of my mother. But I was going to come back to the studio last night. I had travel issues. I'm okay. Everything's okay, but I couldn't get back here. So I couldn't do the live show last night. I was going to. I advertised. But I couldn't make it. Now I'm here today, and I'm going to be here tomorrow and Friday and whatever is needed to cover college football. Last night I watched the college football playoff rankings. I think it was last night or this morning I tweeted out, looks good to me. I think it was last night. Of course, people are going to nitpick, I get it. I did it the week before. I thought BYU and Indiana should have been ahead of Penn State and Tennessee. I get it. I completely understand why SMU Mustangs fans believe it should be SMU listed there in the Miami spot when it comes to that 4th seed, because SMU is ahead technically of Miami in the ACC, right? I get it. But they went according to the rankings, right? Look, but I was not anticipating, and shame on me, I was not anticipating this massive SEC propaganda that is going on right now. It is unbelievable. Now, we saw last year Greg Sankey, he hit the circuit. He was pushing for Alabama, and Jim Phillips didn't get out there. But you've got Mike Greenberg. You've got Paul Finebaum this morning saying, how dare the playoff committee not have a billion SEC teams ranked? How dare they have Georgia behind Penn State and Indiana who haven't played? What are we talking about? Look, when I made my predictions of the college football rankings, it was really similar to what they put out, the playoff committee, except for I had Georgia still in it and Ole Miss just out, even though Ole Miss defeated Georgia because Georgia defeated Texas. And I didn't think they would do the right thing, but I think the playoff committee did the right thing by putting Ole Miss as the last team at large bid in. And they took Georgia out. And everybody can't believe that Georgia's out. Georgia is still going to, if they win out, they're going to get back in. So, again, it's not the end of the world. If SMU wins, they're going to be in, right? I mean, but what my question is what did Paul Finebaum expect? Who is, if you put Georgia in, who is supposed to be out? I think the best argument is another SEC team. First of all, let's look at the playoff rankings. Okay? Georgia is number 12, but then again, they would be out because Boise State would be the 12th seed as the 5th highest ranked conference champion. Who are we supposed to take out? Ole Miss? They just beat Georgia. Alabama? Alabama defeated Georgia. Is Georgia supposed to be ahead of Notre Dame? Now, Notre Dame has the worst loss. No question about it. No question about it. But have you seen them play the last 7 weeks? They're rolling over. They're not just getting by. They're crushing everybody. BYU, they're going to get ahead of undefeated BYU. They're supposed to be ahead of undefeated Indiana. Oh, Indiana hasn't played anybody. Again, the eye test, there's only so much data points you can go to. Records do mean something. Strength of schedule does mean something. How you play does mean something. The eye test has to be at least part of this, unless you go to the NFL model, unless you go to automatic qualifiers. And even then, if you go to automatic qualifiers, you're going to have to use the eye test to seed them. But whatever. The eye test has to be some part. Georgia last year was ranked number 2 in the country with pretty much the exact same resume as Indiana has right now. Strength of schedule, margin of victory, almost identical. And yet Finebaum and Greenberg and everybody is mocking Indiana. You weren't mocking Georgia last year. Indiana is going to have their huge test against the Buckeyes, and we're going to find out. But come on, you're not going to have Georgia ahead of Indiana. What are we even doing here? What are we even? Carson Beck has been throwing interceptions almost as many times as the fat guy from Minnesota puts donuts in his big mouth in the last 3-4 weeks. I mean, what are we even doing here? Penn State, who has Penn State beaten? Well, they beat USC. USC defeated LSU, who's still ranked 22 for some reason. You can't. And then you got Texas. If you want to look at just pure resume, what is Texas' resume? What have they done? What has Texas done? They defeated a 5-5 Oklahoma. Okay, congratulations. You beat Vanderbilt by 3 points. And you lost to Georgia. If you want to go by resume, just resume. Now, I think Texas does pretty good on the eye test. I think Indiana, you got to use a little bit of the eye test. But if you want to just go pure resume, like Finebaum and Heather Dinich and the whole ESPN apparatus, I don't get it. What did you expect? 5 teams ranked in the top 12, top 11? 5? What is ESPN? Is the SEC dominating the college football world this year? Do you really see that in your eye test? Do you? I don't. I can make a good argument that the SEC is the best football conference this year, but completely dominating? No, come on. Come on, guys and gals. Come on. It is. I'm caught in a pretty unique position where I am actually defending the playoff selection committee for the choices that they made. For now, I get it. SMU believes that they should be Let me post this here. Hold on. The SMU fans, and I don't blame them, they believe they should be put right here. That their name should be put right here. Their only loss is to an undefeated, leading Big 12 BYU. It would be a natural fit in every single way to put SMU right here instead of Miami. I understand their argument. The good news is SMU has complete control over their own destination. If they beat Miami in the ACC championship game, which they very well could do. I think the playoff selection committee did pretty good. I think they did pretty good. Now, a lot of people are saying BYU should be ahead of Texas. But the argument that another SEC team should be in this, again, I give you the question, who are you supposed to take out to put Georgia in? What team? I don't see one. Unless you want to argue Ole Miss. But then again, that gives you 4 SEC teams. Now, the SEC is mad, right? The SEC is mad. The title of the show is, why is the SEC mad at the college football playoff rankings? Is this an SEC leverage play, or are they laying ground for a future exit? I want to give you more evidence that the SEC is mad. Let's take a look at Brett McMurphy's article. Action Network. McMurphy's Law. Why the SEC deserves to be upset with the college football playoff rankings. To paraphrase Network's Howard Beale, the SEC is mad as hell and probably not going to take it anymore. What's got the SEC more perturbed than its fan bases continuing to launch debris on the field? The latest college football playoff rankings. Namely, the selection committee ranking 3 two-loss SEC teams: Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, several spots behind undefeated or one loss that played in easier schedules and have no top 25 wins. Alabama's ranked number 10. Ole Miss is number 11. And Georgia is number 12. They each have 2 losses. One loss, Penn State is ranked number 4, ahead of number 5 ranked and undefeated Indiana. Those 2 Big Ten teams have as many top 25 victories as I do. 0. By comparison, against current top 25 teams, Alabama's 4-1, Georgia is 2-2, Ole Miss is 2-1. By the way, one loss SEC member Texas is ranked number 3, despite having no top 25 victories. Oh, well, there goes the narrative. There goes the argument. If Indiana doesn't deserve their spot, if Penn State don't deserve their spot, and again, Ole Miss lost to LSU, an LSU team that lost to USC, a USC team that has lost to Penn State. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. I mean, how high is Ole Miss supposed to be? Exactly. They lost to Kentucky. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. No disrespect at all. But my eyes tell me that Indiana crushes Vanderbilt. Not to mention Penn State. Texas best win, good luck. They all smell like bad fish. Take your pick. From Michigan 5-5, Vanderbilt 6-4, Colorado State 6-3, ULM 5-4, Louisiana Monroe. So whatever argument that Greenberg, that Paul Finebaum, that Heather Dinich, and everybody else, about everybody else that's ahead of Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss, well, Texas is sitting there. You can't avoid talking about Texas. This is exactly what ESPN did. This is exactly what ESPN did when they compared Alabama and Florida State for the final playoff spot last year. They did not compare. They only looked at Florida State's flaw, that they were without Jordan Travis. They did not look at Alabama. They didn't even talk about Alabama. They didn't. I screamed about it every single live show last year during the playoff when all that debate going on and when Florida State got screwed. Again, they did not mention Texas on the ESPN shows. They just said, okay, they're number two. And look at the great loss that Georgia has. I mean, the great win that Georgia has against Texas. Look at that. And who has Texas beat? Now, I believe you got to have a little bit of what looks good. What looks good. And there's a lot of times that Texas has looked pretty damn good. But I'm going to say that about Indiana too. I'm going to be consistent. But ESPN is avoiding it. But now this article takes a turn. It takes a turn at the very end. Hang on, buckle up. We also factor in wins and losses in terms of who you play and how you play in those particular games. College Football Playoff Selection Committee Chairman Ward Manroll said a team with a weaker schedule, how they perform as well against the opponents that they play. So it's an evaluation that takes into consideration strength of schedule, but it also evaluates how you play against those teams that are on your schedule, whether it's a strong schedule or a weak schedule. And I agree. I absolutely agree. And the performance of the teams on the field week to week in totality, when we look at what they have done over the season up until the point that we are evaluating. The team strength of schedules that they were evaluating, Alabama's 3, Georgia 7, Penn State's 27, Ole Miss 36, and Indiana 81. But then I always get back to this point. Are you positive? Are you sure that Ole Miss could be undefeated if they had played Indiana's schedule up until now? Are you sure? Are you sure Georgia would be undefeated if they had played Indiana's schedule up until now? Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. Georgia beat Kentucky by 1 point. Are you sure? Are you sure that Georgia and Ole Miss should be ranked higher than Indiana? Back to the article. The Hoosiers have had an incredible season, but have exactly one victory against a team currently over 500. Mighty 5-4 Nebraska, who blew the doors off of Colorado. At least half of the SEC would also be undefeated against Indiana's schedule. No, they would not. I would disagree with Brett McMurphy. No, they wouldn't. And they've shown it on the football field. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Kentucky's beating Ole Miss. Again, for whatever reason, SEC teams do not get judged. Everybody else does. Back to the article. Yet several SEC teams are ranked below Indiana because they have faced a much more difficult schedule and have more losses. Manuel says the committee looks at the strength of schedule in every comparison that we do. For each team, we see where different data points and strength of schedule is always there, Manuel said. We also look at the games, obviously, and see how a team is playing, see the results of the game, how the teams play, how the committee ranks the SEC teams with multiple losses compared with non-SEC one-loss teams in the final playoff rankings on December 8th could determine the future of the college football playoffs. Let me say this again. This is PATC money shot number 1 of the article. And number 2 is right around the corner, here at Peek Around the Corner. How the committee ranks the SEC teams with multiple losses compared with non-SEC one-loss teams in the final playoff rankings on December 8th could determine the future of the college football playoff. So, how does the playoff committee rank Alabama, a Georgia, and an Ole Miss versus a one-loss Penn State coming up, possibly one-loss Indiana, potentially a one-loss Big 12 loser of the championship game, BYU? Because those are the examples that are live. A BYU in Indiana, a Penn State, because Miami's going to be a champion or a 2-loss. SMU's going to be a champion or a multiple loss. Right? And if Notre Dame gets a second loss, they're going to be out. So what they're saying is how the playoff rankings, how the selection committee compares an Alabama, a Georgia, an Ole Miss, maybe even a Missouri if they stay with 2 losses, versus an Indiana 1 loss, BYU 1 loss, or Penn State 1 loss. And this is PATC's money shot number 2. Brett McMurphy goes on to say, right after he says, this could determine the future of the college football playoff if the committee penalizes the SEC teams for playing at tougher schedules and in turn suffering more losses, then the SEC could decide at some point to take its ball and go home. Why should they beat their brains in and against each other just to get bypassed in the playoff for teams that had an easier schedule? Maybe the SEC gets fed up enough to partner with the Big Ten in the future. Maybe the SEC has a few more teams down the road and creates its own 20-team or 24-team playoff. The TV networks, namely ABC and ESPN, would love this setup. Anything is possible. Just be prepared for the future consequences if you make the SEC mad. Why are they mad? Why are they mad? Why was ESPN so aggressive this morning? Can you make an argument that Georgia should be in the top 12 right now? I guess. But is it like a complete catastrophe? Is it a complete injustice? No. Look how Georgia has played. Look how LSU... Look, Missouri don't have their quarterback. Remember about Jordan Travis? Go right down the list. Missouri is not Missouri. Remember when they used that argument with Flores? Missouri, so playing Missouri is not the same thing anymore. What is Texas' biggest win? Again, I happen to believe, my opinion only, I'm the only happy person here. I think the playoff selection committee for this projection, this bracket, pretty much got it right. Now, I am going to open up the phone lines. You let me know if they got it all wrong. You let me know if I got it all wrong. You let me know if you believe there should be 5 SEC teams in there. Or do you believe that SMU should... Whoa! Look at SMU. Look at their... We're going to take a look. Before I open up the phone lines, take a look at the SMU schedule. They're 8-1 overall. 8-1 overall. They lost to BYU by 3 points. 3 points. Pittsburgh, 48-25. Louisville, 34-27. Who's ranked number 22 right now? I mean, they got as good as argument as anybody. But yet it's ESPN. And before I get to your phone calls, before I get to your phone calls, I want to say this one more thing. And you guys know this bothers me more than anything else. I anticipate disagreement. This is what this YouTube channel is for. I anticipate disagreement. I hope we do have disagreement, because if we all agreed, it would be boring. But what really bothers me about Paul Finebaum, and I can say this because I have no strings attached. This is the Rebel Outpost show of all college football. I get everybody mad at me. Everybody mad at me. It's even crazy that we get over 100 people watching the show, since most people are upset with me. But I thank you so much for coming on in. I do appreciate it. I'm very humble. But what bothers me about Paul Finebaum and what Greenberg and Heather Dinich talking about 3 lost teams, don't rule out 3 lost teams this year in the SEC. It's their lack of curiosity. Their lack of curiosity to see beyond the elite. They were mocking Indiana just like they mocked BYU the week before. How much have you watched Indiana, Paul Finebaum? How much have they watched BYU? How much have they watched SMU? I don't know. It's just, they're not interested. They're not interested. And I don't even think most of it is like, I might be naive here, but I don't think they're getting their orders. March out there and march out there and say this is a travesty. That's what they said this morning. Watch Mike Greenberg and what he said. He had papers in his hand. And he had papers in his hand. He was going like this. He's going, oh my goodness. Oh my. I don't think they get their march. I just think they have no curiosity other than what their product is. And I think that's it. I think there's a wall there, and they can't see beyond the wall. Kerry Gold knows that 3 lost teams should nevertheless be a national championship. They do that, and I'm done. Well, there might be a year where I think a 3 lost team should make the playoffs. I'm not going to rule that out, but I understand I understand, Kerry. But a 12-team playoff, or when this gets expanded, this is going to get expanded, unless the SEC takes the ball and goes home. And I don't think they're going to do that. But a 3-loss team in some seasons, I believe they have an opportunity. But I don't think this year, unless things get real crazy. But thank you, Kerry Golden Nose, for your super chat. I appreciate your generosity once again. Ryan Willie, in my opinion, it's because 3 of the top are from the Big Ten. Is that why they're so mad? Again, some of that is going to play out. Ohio State's going to play Indiana. One of them's going to fall. They're going to be a Big Ten championship game. It's all going to play itself out. Ryan Willie, thank you so much. You may be right. You may be right. They were mocking Indiana. Thank you for the super chat. Ryan Willie, I appreciate your generosity once again. Okay. We're going to open up the phone lines. 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Let me know how ESPN got it all correct and how I got it all wrong.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan Thomas, the floor is yours.
Oh, it sounds like Heather Dinich is getting her cheese all up in a curdle. It's funny, Greg, because like in some years the role is going to be reversed, right? There might be some years where you might have a bunch of 2-loss Big Ten teams, right? And you might have 3 or 4 SEC teams in the top 5. I mean, to me, what's irritating is, like, let's be honest, folks. Penn State and Indiana and Ohio State and Oregon are all having great years. Where are we supposed to put them? Where are we supposed to put them? I mean, you've got 2 undefeated teams in the Big Ten, which is not an easy conference to play in. So where are we supposed to put Ohio State and Oregon? Where are we supposed to put, Penn State barely lost to Ohio State and Indiana's undefeated. So where are we supposed to put them, Heather?
I don't know. It's like your BYU team last week when they laughed and mocked about it. I mean, what are they supposed to do? They have a schedule. They're winning these football games. Some of these games they're whipping the team. Some of these games they need a comeback, and they achieve it, just like Miami. Until last week, it caught up to them. Where again? That's the question I probably should have asked. Well, I kind of did ask. I mean, who is Georgia supposed to replace right now? Because they were on this Georgia thing. They thought Georgia definitely should be in right now, top 11, excluding the G5. It's like, and they never talked about who they should. Well, they did. They talked about Indiana. I don't know, man.
Well, and here's the thing: is Tennessee's going to Georgia, where they've lost, I think, 7 straight so far.
Yeah.
And Georgia wants to get into playoff, and they're pissed. So I mean, I think Tennessee's going to get curb stomped on.
Well, I think Tennessee's going to lose. I have not made it I could be completely wrong, but the eye test. Okay, we have to use the eye test somewhat.
Yeah.
Somewhat, right? Somewhat. I'm not saying a whole bunch. We have to use it a little bit. Now, and when people say the eye test, that means people automatically think, well, the SEC teams and the Big Ten teams are doing great in the eye. I mean, that's why we have them in there, because of this fake eye test. Tennessee has not passed the eye test for me lately, right? Go look at the results. Go look how they're playing. I mean,
they lost at Arkansas.
They're a little bit of a mess, okay? But they have a resume. Okay, fine, have them in there. But if Georgia beats them, and if they curb stomp them, like you said, then we got issues. I don't know. They might not make it in, and maybe a one-loss BYU or 2-loss SMU or 2-loss Miami or might get in there because Tennessee hasn't been doing much lately. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I mean, let's kind of, to stop and think about this. Like Texas, they lost their entire running back room to start the season.
Yeah.
I mean, and they haven't really been. I mean, Georgia kind of dominated them. I think Texas is going to have a hard game at A&M, and you know what? The game against Arkansas, you never know because Razorback magic happened against Tennessee. So I mean, you don't know. But here's the thing: is like there isn't a standout team this year in the SEC, and that's okay. That's going to happen. Every league is going to have years that are up and down.
Yeah.
And here's the reality. So, like I said, the magic number for BYU to make the playoff is 3, Greg. They need to win 3 games, 3 out of the next 4, and they're in. Because if they finish 12-0, they're going to be probably ranked in the top 5. And if they lose in the conference championship game, they're not dropping out of the playoff. They're not going to drop 8 spots. That's not going to happen. And that's the one thing. And if they lose one of the regular season games and win the conference championship as number 3, then they're in by default. But the reality is look, we all sign up for this. I know we don't like it, but when you have a bunch of teams that have 2 losses, you don't deserve 4 spots or 5 spots. Nothing entitles you to that. Yeah. It's the entitlement attitude. Because, I know, we can make fun of Indiana for only playing really 3 true road games because, but the issue is they've dominated teams on their schedule.
Yeah.
And, and if they go in there and they have a great game and they play well against Ohio State, and they could win that game, who knows?
Yeah. Now, if they get blown out, we will reevaluate, right? Obviously.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the thing, though, is Indiana's a good team. I don't think Ohio State's blowing them out.
I don't think so.
And I don't think, and I don't think any Buckeye fan is, I don't think any Buckeye fan thinks that game's going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
It's sort of, to me, I get it, but. Georgia and Alabama obviously are special brands, but there's nothing special about Ole Miss, okay? There's nothing special about that brand. I'm sorry. You have to go back to the segregation 60s when Ole Miss was relevant. Let's be honest here. And it's just sort of, I think it's just this arrogant, entitled attitude. And the real question is, not only it's just cheapening the accomplishments of other schools, not only the ACC, the Big 12, or who else, but also the cheapening the accomplishments of the Big 10. And remember how I said a couple weeks ago, say he realistically thinks that, 8 of the 12 playoff teams should all come from the SEC. That's kind of entitled arrogance, which is why, it turns everyone off. And, everyone in the fan section, and you see it you see it worst of all from SEC fans, especially like Texas fans. It's like, just stop it, folks. People care about college football. They care about their team. They want a chance to be relevant. I know there's great programs. I know there's special programs like LSU and Alabama, in the SEC. We know that. We recognize that they're going to get their own. But don't cheapen the accomplishments of other people that are having miraculous years and try to say that your 2 or 3 loss team is somehow better than them and that people's accomplishments should be discounted. That's just not how it works. Don't be a jerk and just, shut up and accept that this is the system. And if you want to go off on your own, go off on your own. But you know what? Good luck, because you're going to get your ass taxed and, good luck with all that money, which 40% of it's going to go to Uncle Sam. So go ahead, make my day. Anyway, great show, Greg. But I just think it's, to me, if I'm an Indiana fan or a Penn State fan or, Oregon fan, I'm just livid at this because like those 3 teams are having great seasons right now, and just it really irritates me that they deserve to be in the top 4 or top 5. Where else are you going to put them? And stop cheapening their accomplishments. But anyway,
all right, man.
Thank you, Greg. Bye.
You got it. Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't.
Call from
Tristan Fibes.
Tristan, the floor is yours. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
Listen, I want to echo a little bit what Ryan was saying. I agree with a lot of what he says here. This is the hell the SEC created for itself by expanding and taking 2 really good programs. Right? You're going to have the scheduling nightmare where all the really good teams play each other a whole bunch. And there was going to be some extra losses at the top, and we're seeing it, right? So this is a natural byproduct of how they expanded with the last round of expansion.
Yeah.
And I don't like what happened to FSU last year. I don't want the same thing to happen again this year. I think the solution, ironically enough, in this is the SEC needs to expand again with some non-football powers and and lighten the load a little bit for the football schools so that they can get through with a better record. So I don't like. I share the sentiment. I don't like the statement by them or what's going on. I think you got to win it on the field. And if you have 3 lost teams, then so be it. I mean, we've been saying all season long the cutoff was 2 losses. That's what we've been saying the whole season.
Well, I don't think that's an automatic. I just think this year it is. I mean, this year I think it's obvious that just because of how things have played out. Look, you don't have like Brett McMurphy's article that I went through earlier today, and what Heather Dennett said, and what all these people on ESPN said. You don't have this type of information coming out unless the SEC is mad and they have said it in private and in public, like they're not happy with this. Greg Sankey has said a number of times, we're waiting all of our decisions. We're holding up some decisions until we see how this college football playoff format works out. In other words, how does the selection committee pick the teams to go to the playoffs?
Right.
So they're putting a lot of pressure on the committee. Now ESPN is carrying the water, and I don't know. I don't know if the future is automatic qualifiers, to where the committee now is only determining the seeds 1 through 12 or 1 through 14, or the more extreme future in which the SEC says, okay, we're out of here because we're not going to abide by what's going on here. So,
right. Yep. Well, we'll just see how it turns out. I've got my fingers crossed that the teams that I think should be in will actually get in. It didn't work out last year with Florida State, so I don't know.
Let me ask you. Do you think? Let me put it up on the screen. Do you agree with these rankings? Pretty much overall.
Let's see here.
I got up on the screen. I happen to be pretty much in agreement.
I like I like the top 3 for sure. Indiana might deserve to be ahead of Penn State, but that's a minor quibble. I think BYU's probably in the right spot. Let's see here. I feel like Georgia should be lower. Well, Greg, I did tell you they were going to lose to Ole Miss.
Yeah, you did.
And that was an ugly game. I didn't realize it was going to be that bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the top 12, that's probably close to being right. Although, again, I'm probably too egalitarian. But I would want to put Boise State in there at 12 and take out Georgia. That's how I feel about it. Because look, if they've got Ole Miss and Tennessee and Alabama, and that's 4 already, they don't need a 5th. I don't want them to have a 5th.
Yeah.
That's just no.
I
would swap Boise State and Georgia.
Maybe some other year, but not this year. I don't.
It's
not
exactly.
Like it's not like they whooped up on their non-con. No, Texas A&M at home lost to Notre Dame. Right? It's not like these teams are struggling with Kentucky. Kentucky's down.
Yeah. Yep.
Or they've lost to Kentucky. I just don't. They lost to Vanderbilt, Alabama. I mean, this is not the year for 5 SEC teams. in my opinion.
Yeah, and Greg, the thing too about this, again, we're talking about, committees and polls.
Yeah.
Which I hate, because I think it should be, my ideal would be to have AQs and just say, look, if you're going to have 3 or 4, whatever the number is, you figure it out yourself. You come up with your own tiebreakers.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of thing, I feel like someone's going to get shafted with this system. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. We've got 12 for this year, and then I think is it for sure that we're going to get 14 next year, Greg?
No.
It's not.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I feel like if the SEC were to get ripped off this year in their eyes, then they would push for 14 next year.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that might be where this is all headed, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Hey, listen, I wanted to call in and actually talk about the situation with Georgia, okay? Because I have an interesting take on them, I think.
Got it.
We saw how they performed against Ole Miss, and Greg, they might actually beat Tennessee this weekend. One thing about Kirby is that he's pretty good at getting his team to have a bounce back. If they have a loss, he usually has them ready to play the next week, and they're more intensified or whatever. But I'm telling you what, there's going to be chatter this offseason. You just wait and see. People are going to start talking about the problems that Georgia has in fielding an offense and the quarterback position. And this is a criticism that was actually becoming quite common just prior to the national championship teams with Stetson Bennett. And it centers around the idea that Kirby either will not or cannot recruit a scrambling quarterback and put that into the offense, put that element into the offense. And Greg, if you look around all of college football, but even if you were to just focus on the SEC, you see these scrambling quarterbacks all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas A&M, Reed, and Jaden Daniels last year, and Lagway this year, and Tennessee's had it recently, and you look at how much of a weapon that Milroe has been for the past couple of years. You just see it all over the place, and this is something that Georgia doesn't do. And I'll say this, Greg, they lucked into getting Stetson Bennett, who was a walk-on and who actually had some talent and was able to scramble, and so they utilized his scrambling. But other than Stetson Bennett, they can't find these quarterbacks, Greg. Either that or they can't get them. I don't know what it is. And this is going to be Dabo Swinney Part 2 right here. Kirby has to evolve his offense, and he's going to come under criticism if he can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that chatter is going to pick up again this offseason based on what we're seeing this year. And they're also having trouble recruiting wide receivers, Greg.
Yeah.
I know they get tons of good ones, but they can't get them in the top 100 like the super elite receivers. They don't go to Georgia. And it's easy to see why. You're not going to get numbers in that offense. Right? So
yeah.
The last top 100 receiver that Georgia had was George Pickens, and it's been a few years since he was in the program. So that's the chatter that I'm telling you is going to start occurring this offseason with Georgia. Kirby's going to have to evolve. He's going to have to find a way to get that scrambling quarterback into the offense. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do it or not.
Yeah. Great info. There's something going on there, and we've been saying it all year, right? Except for when they beat Clemson 34-3. Ever since then, they have been off. They've been completely off.
And we didn't notice it last year because, Greg, if you go back to their national championship teams that they had back to back, what it really was a combination of 4 people. It was Todd Monken, Bennett, Brock Bowers, and Ladd McConkey. Mm-hmm. Okay? Last season, you still had Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey in the offense. Yeah. And I think that helped. I think that helped the offense a great deal. But now that those 2 are gone, in addition to Monken and Stetson Bennett, They're just not the same. We're seeing it this year. They're not the same. They can't put up the great numbers without the turnovers. They can score a bunch of points, but they're going to have turnovers in the process. And they're not going to make the playoff, Greg. Or if they do, they might find a way to sneak into the playoff, but they're not going to go very far.
Well, if they win the rest of their games, they're going to the playoffs. If they beat
if they beat Tennessee
and if they beat Georgia Tech,
right,
which is not going to be easy,
right,
they'll get in because something's going to happen in front of them. They'll get in. So, yeah, great call, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, you take care, Greg, and keep up the good work.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
All right, bye-bye.
Thomas Castellanos, the quarterback of Boston College, is in the portal. Or he's going to go in the portal.
From
Immaculate.
I just want to finish my comment on Thomas Castellanos going in the portal. Boston College quarterback. He would be an interesting pickup for a G5 program that is looking to make a run next year to win their conference and possibly get in the playoffs. He can bail you out, man. He can bail that offense out. I'm going to be interested to see where Thomas Castellanos goes. I bet he gets picked up by a really good G5 football program. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. Go ahead, Immaculate. The floor is yours.
A lot to talk about, but I thought I would just call in and say hello and maybe give my 2 cents worth on this. I already said kind of a lot, but my personal thought, I've got kind of this biased view, is that everyone's really just helping to further down the path of tearing down the CFP. Not completely, but now you've got SEC people who are basically going to hate this thing because it didn't have enough SEC teams and they didn't get their home games because most of the teams are going to be going up north to games in the first round. And they're going to want to see something where these games happen in their own place. And so, I think what we're seeing is the SEC is still the best football conference in America. But the top end is no longer as dominant as it once was because it does not have the second string and the third string and the fourth string studs that are just sitting there and waiting for their time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have gotten NIL deals and transferred elsewhere, or they're just not coming anymore in the numbers like they used to. And so it kind of used to be easy for some of these programs to just, you knew how it was going to go every year. And now these guys are fighting in the trenches for players in the same way that everyone else is.
Yep.
So, they're still good teams. They still play good football. I'm watching Tennessee now, and they've improved over the season. And that's part of it too. Is they're not ready at the start of the season, kind of like everyone else, because they're picking together and putting together their teams just like everyone else. So, I think that they're going to have to come to an understanding is that while you've got good football across the line in the SEC, and it's actually becoming a conference maybe of parity. Top end is just not as dominant as it used to be. I mean, Alabama might win it all, but that's if other teams just don't know how to prepare for Milroe. That guy's like a galloping ghost. You watch him run, and it's just kind of amazing. But if a team figures out how to stop that, what do they have? The 17-year-old on the outside, you just can't throw bombs to him all the time. So I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be, but the controversy is great. But I think at some point in time, I think it's going to kind of blow up on itself. You're starting to see talk about divisions now, and you're starting to see talk about playoffs. It's not just us on the out in the periphery talking about these things anymore, Greg.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are becoming very, very popular, common talking points now. I'm sure you've noticed.
Yeah, I have. I'm still going to the tiebreaker thing is going to be an issue. But I do know that there is huge pushback on going to divisions. These conferences really don't want to do it. So we'll see.
There's no until we have, conference playoffs. There's none.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the easiest way to do a conference playoffs is to have pods. But maybe they can find a different way of doing it. I don't know. But yeah, I know they don't want to do it, but they might, they might have to because of other reasons, like the playoffs. So,
yeah, like it helps build rivalries. Like if everyone in that division is playing for a spot in the playoffs, it builds value there.
Yeah.
And it's like the Big Ten when you. This is what I said in the post. This is going to people wondering how big is this going to get? How big are divisions going to get if we do them? Watch the Big Ten West. That's all you really need to watch.
Mm-hmm.
However many teams that the Big Ten adds in the West is how big the divisions would possibly be. Because that's a problem, and we're seeing it this year, right? Like the travel's an issue. So you do those divisions, you have enough in the West, you cut down on that travel. Like you could make it to basically where teams are only going out there maybe once every other year. Because you may only play teams in that division once or twice. And so you really cut that down, whereas if we make this to where it's no divisions, you're actually going to do that more often. So I know in the Big Ten, I think that you'll probably hear that tone change. I could be wrong, but I think once they figure out, who 19 and 20 are, or if they're going to go to 24, whatever it is, that's the discussion of the future. So, yeah, for now, divisions don't really have a place in, those upfront priority discussions of the conference. But once they get governance, once, we're getting close to getting out of those bowl contracts, I think that stuff's going to come hot and heavy, and you're going to hear a lot of change in that tone that you hear amongst your circle.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's it, man. I just wanted to say,
all right.
I think SEC folks are going to have to get used to being in a conference of parity where their top schools are not just above and beyond what everyone else is. So it should be fun to see, man. Looking forward to it.
You got it. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Great call. Edward, the Auburn Tiger. The SEC is not down. They have given the best teams in conference playoff schedule that 95% of the teams outside the conference would be exposed. I don't know if they're down. I just don't think they're up.
Call from
Replica.
Replica, is this you?
Yes, it is.
All right, the floor is yours.
Greg, like an extraterrestrial, I come in peace.
By the
Awesome.
way, can I break in on that? Can I just take 1 minute to talk about the congressional hearings?
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Replica. So they had the congressional hearings today on the UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. They had 4 witnesses up there: Lewis, Schellenberger, Elizondo, whatever. I'm glad I did not have a live stream doing that show because there wasn't anything new in that. However, for those who are interested, one of the congresswomen that were on the panel for the hearings did put into the record, congressional record, 12 pages of the Immaculate Constellation, which is a program that gathers up all this data for years and years and years, satellite imagery. Supposedly there's hundreds of pictures and videos of objects. We don't know what they are. Mm-hmm. There was 12 pages of that, and it is out there on the internet. 12 pages, and a lot of it is summaries of incidences that have happened around the world. One of those incidences that is on this summary, one of the summary pages of Immaculate Constellation, is the jellyfish, but is not the incident that had the jellyfish going over a base in Iraq. This was a different jellyfish object that could only be seen by a special camera, not by your human eyes, that was going over the border of Mexico into the United States. That jellyfish, that image that was collected, was compared to the jellyfish that was going over the base in Iraq, and it's basically, according to the summary, it fits. It's basically the same thing. What the hell it is, nobody. I don't know. Nobody know. Well, somebody may know, or maybe none of us know. But anyway, so there was something different that came out of the hearings today. For those who follow this closely, trying to figure out what this is, what is going on, because some of this is unexplainable. It doesn't mean it's aliens, although it could be, but it doesn't mean, it just means that we don't know what this stuff is. There was something new that came out because of a congressional woman put it into in the record, and it's out there now. There's 12 pages that is out there that is now everyone's talking about. Replica, I thank you for letting me cut in on you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting news. I have to look into that when I get some free time, because there's been a lot of reports over the years of UFOs in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area as well. So, interesting news. But, yeah, I wanted to kind of hash through all this stuff that's going on. And, you know, I left a comment as soon as I came in. The narrative war has already started. So last night I was kind of listening to a bunch of different reactions to the playoff rankings, and you have like the ESPN folks who are shilling for their conference. You've got Barstool. They have a podcast with a lot of pro SEC guys. They're just taking a blowtorch to basically anybody not in that conference. They didn't really go in on the Big Ten too much, but it's very much a concerted effort to kind of push the narrative. And the veil's pretty much come off in the way the committee ranks these teams. I've said for a long time that there's like no real rhyme or reason. They really just do what they put the team they want in, and as long as they feel like they can get away with it, that's what they push in. They're already setting the stage to try to put as many SEC teams into the playoff as possible. And I'm not a pro SEC guy. Like, I actually don't like them for what they stand for historically, but my team is in there, so it is what it is. But I'm not saying anything to be like a homer or to push a narrative. I'm just telling people so they won't be surprised on Selection Sunday. And it's gotten so blatant that it's come to the point where I have to start questioning the legitimacy of decisions being made. So, for example, I'm hearing that Nico is going to be out for this Georgia game.
Yeah.
Tyson hasn't said that, but there's a guy named Bear. He used to do like gambling picks for ESPN. Now he's with Fox. He's reporting that Nico's going to be out. And now I have to question, is Hypo sitting Nico because he's hurt, or is he sitting him because he knows that he can absorb another loss and get in as a 10-2 SEC team. And
well, or not, but I mean, okay. The head coach of Tennessee is not looking out for the SEC.
I'm not questioning his legitimacy. I'm just saying the timing of it.
Yeah.
Because I'll give you an example. Remember the Alabama LSU game from a few years ago when Joe Burrow went down to Tuscaloosa and really just ripped them to shreds? And then Alabama had this wild comeback, really put some nice window dressing on the game, but they really were in no position to win. After that game, the whole narrative pushed by ESPN is like, what is this incredible game? And Alabama almost won it. They're definitely one of the best teams, and we're seeing it again right now. So if Nico doesn't play, Georgia's going to win. And when Georgia wins, there's going to be this propaganda to move them up the ranks or to find a way to get them in. And I say that.
Yeah.
I encourage people to listen to Josh Pate's reaction to the CFP rankings.
Yeah.
And listen to the way he was talking about Indiana and BYU and even Penn State. And
yeah,
without actually saying it, he was basically saying that if any of those teams lose, they probably shouldn't be in. He didn't say that specifically about Penn State, but he did say, like, Indiana and BYU, like, if they lose, that they're probably not going to be in, and then they shouldn't be in because basically college football has turned into America's Next Top Model where all the teams got to strut down the runway and hope their names gets called on Selection Sunday. We value resume for some teams, but other teams we don't value it. Then we value eye tests for some teams, and then for some teams we don't. And then there's people trying to hide behind the shield of conference they play in. It's going to get real messy. And I say that because everybody's been talking about this Big Ten SEC advisory board as this great alliance, and they're all moving in the same direction. But what happens when certain teams get shafted? Like, what happens then? A long time ago, I compared them to the Deadly Alliance, and that's a story from Mortal Kombat, the video game, between two evil people in the game, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi. They came up with this alliance because they wanted to kill Liu Kang and seize this power to, like, run the world. It's like world domination, basically. And when they killed Liu Kang, the alliance dissipated, and they began to turn against each other. So I wonder if some of these SEC teams who are going to have 2 or 3 losses get left out, how does that affect their relationship with the Big Ten, this advisory board? Because it's easy to say that they can put together this scheduling agreement and they're going to make a boatload of money and everything's going to be amazing. But if the SEC is already losing 2 or 3 games now and their teams are getting left out, is there really going to be an incentive to play those teams? And you saw the McMurphy article already. They're talking about possibly having their own playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, when have we ever heard that?
Well,
like,
we have heard that, but
I'm talking about, like, recently.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, again, it's one of the reasons why they're talking about having 3 or 4 automatic qualifiers to each conference, so they don't have to worry about losses, so they can play each other in non-conference, so they can make more money, and the losses are not going to affect any of that. They're still going to get their 4 teams in.
I agree, but here's the thing. They're already fighting for the spots now, and that's what all this lashing out, all the narratives from, like, the pro SEC people is really because there's 4 Big Ten teams in the top 5, and those people down in the Southeast don't feel like they're playing a comparable schedule.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about. So if they're saying this now, I guarantee you if Indiana loses to Ohio State and it's not this nail-biter, wire-to-wire game,
Yeah.
there's going to be loud noise to get Indiana out of the playoffs. And let's say that happens. And I know it sounds crazy, but we've left out undefeated Florida State. We've left out a Big Ten champion Penn State in favor of Ohio State. We've seen TCU and Baylor get left out. We've seen Georgia get left out. So the idea that, if insert team here gets the X amount of wins, they're going to be in, history tells us that's not necessarily true. So if they do leave Indiana out and there's only 3 Big Ten teams, when it's time to negotiate for those qualifiers, are the SEC going to ask for 5 instead of 4? And how does that play in the room? Like, these are the things that I'm thinking about, because I can already see it play a mile away. If Indiana loses, they're probably going to leave them out. And if BYU goes 12-0 and loses in the Big 12 championship game, they're probably going to leave them out. And if Penn State loses, that's going to become a loud conversation too. I don't think it's necessarily right. Yeah. I just think that's what's going to happen, because at the end of the day, ESPN is cutting a check, and we've seen them do this before. So just because they've done it to one team don't mean they won't do it again.
Yeah. No, you're right, Replica. Great phone call, sir. Great phone call. I think you might be onto something in regards to the. There might be a little bit of hostility in those Big Ten SEC advisory meetings if one of them feels like they got screwed in the playoff selections. But I appreciate the call. Yep.
Yeah, there's going to be multiple conferences who are going to be angry on Selection Sunday, and I'm going to throw this last part out there. They did not put SMU on that graphic because they do not want to perpetrate the idea of ACC team getting 2 teams in, because SMU is leading the ACC right now.
Yeah.
There's no reason they shouldn't have been in that graphic, but they're being treated like a G5 team still. That's something else that's happening.
Yeah. All right, sir. Appreciate it, my man. Great call.
Have a good one.
Great call. Hey, Greg, they're talking King about UFOs and so forth, so they'll be able to explain the rapture. I don't think they'll be able to explain the rapture. I think those are 2 different things, but that's just my opinion. Thank you, Kerry Gold Nose, for your super chat. I do appreciate it so very much, helping us keep the lights on. Okay, why isn't this?
From
Monavision.
Monavision. Can you hold on 1 second?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Kerry Gold Nose. I appreciate it. One other thing that was in the summary of the Immaculate Constellation was there was another Tic Tac that was spotted and tracked by a space platform, some sort of space platform that we have. So there was another Tic Tac that was tracked and followed according to the summary that was put into the congressional record today. There's about 5 or 6 more examples of things that we cannot explain. Go check it out. Monavision, Mr. Buckeye. Look, last night I thought I being the naive fool that I am, right? Being a complete idiot, I thought everyone was going to be basically okay with this selection, with this projection, with the rankings. But my goodness, the SEC got all up in arms. ESPN, whole bunch of people talking. Josh Pate, a Barstool. I've seen it all. There is a huge anger out there in the land about the SEC getting screwed. And I am quite shocked. Go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
Well, I've got an easy solution for this, Greg. If the SEC feels that they're being slighted, maybe they should move to 9 conference games like everybody else plays.
Ooh.
Get rid of the FCS game that you play the week before last. Alabama, and then you can schedule a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten for 16 out-of-conference games at the beginning of the year so we can see who's better. Indiana played who was in front of them. Ohio State played who was in front of them. Penn State has had to play who was in front of them. Oregon played who was in front of them. They deserve to be where they're at.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look at Ole Miss's schedule. Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake, Georgia Southern. Their first four games, 76-0, 52-3, 40-6, 52-13. And then they played a team with a little bit of a heartbeat, Kentucky, who doesn't have a very good team this year, and they lost.
Yeah, and that was a home game. They lost at home.
So what are we like? So now they have they're the last team in. Okay, you beat Georgia. Okay, but to say that all these teams should be ahead of teams that have played, consistently great every week, I don't get it. I do not get it. I don't know why they're so upset. They got 4 teams in, and it's almost automatic they're going to get a 4th team in. Even if one of those teams fall, a Georgia's going to pick up the pieces. They're probably going to beat Tennessee, whatever. They're going to get 4 teams in. Does anybody really think that this is a 5 SEC? This is a 5-team that they should have 5 teams in the playoffs this year. I'm not talking about next year, where they might deserve to have 6 teams. This year, do they really think they deserve 5 teams? Like they have 5 teams? I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Go ahead.
Yeah, listen. If the SEC had their way, they would believe they have 12 teams, Greg. Instead of scheduling Furman, if you think Indiana's a bad team, put Vanderbilt up against Indiana at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Put Ole Miss up against Ohio State at the beginning of the season.
All Paul Finebaum is doing is looking at the name of Indiana. That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Watch the games.
He's got no curiosity about college football. None. He's a college football guy, but he doesn't like college football. He doesn't watch these games. Yeah.
I mean, the only way that they would watch the games is if an SEC team is in it. So ESPN, because I know ESPN is probably driving this. I don't believe this is just the SEC coming out of pocket. The ESPN talking heads have their directives. Pay the money. Pay the SEC the extra money to play a 16 out-of-conference games against the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Fox and their partners will pony up the other half.
Yeah.
Everybody makes more money.
Yeah.
And then we don't have this argument every single year about who has a tougher schedule.
Yeah.
Because you will have legitimate out-of-conference games.
Yeah, Big Ten wants it. Big Ten wants it to happen.
So, I mean, it's up to the SEC. It sounds to me if they don't want it to happen, they're afraid. And I'm going to tell you what they're afraid about most, Greg. They're afraid right now that the Big Ten are seeded to host games. They do not want to come play in the North in December. They do not want to be at Ohio Stadium.
Yeah.
They do not want to be at Beaver Stadium. They don't want to be in Bloomington, Indiana.
Because if they lose, then, oh my goodness, we lost to Indiana without realizing they're a pretty damn good team. Yep.
Yep. So that's it. I mean, if they want to compare apples and oranges, we play an extra conference game. We have to travel out west for, Ohio State's loss was traveling out west, and the travel has impacted the Big Ten this year.
Yeah.
We play the extra conference game. We travel out west. You guys play 8 conference games. You schedule an FCS team every year.
Let's do it, baby. Scheduling agreement. Let me tell you something, man. The Golden Gophers, we are not afraid of Mississippi State. We're not afraid of Vanderbilt. Bring them on! Bring them on in Minneapolis. Let's go! Let's go!
Let's do it. And we don't have to do it at the beginning of the season, Greg. They've got that slot they always want to put in the FCS game before their last game of the season. Make that a Big Ten game, and a game against a Big Ten team.
Do it at
Come to Minnesota in November.
The Gophers The Gophers always open up the season at home on that Thursday, right?
Right.
So bring on Mississippi State, bring on Vanderbilt. Let's go. Let's go. In fact, we do have Mississippi State coming up. But anyways, go ahead, sir.
I'm with it, Greg. That's all I wanted to say. If, the SEC can complain all day, ESPN can push the narrative all they want.
Yeah.
ESPN's a very rich company. They can put the money out there to pay the SEC to move to 9 conference games and schedule with the Big Ten. And then there won't be any issues. You won't have any controversy vis-a-vis the Big Ten and the SEC.
When are you on next, sir?
Probably be on Friday, but I was going to go live tonight. This really upset me when I read this article, Greg. But I might go on tonight, but I'll probably see him on Friday. I'll save my language for our channel. So.
Got it. All right. Appreciate it, my man.
Thanks, Greg.
Great call.
Bye-bye.
Beautiful call. Moen Vision, Mr. Buckeye. Of course, I can't find my... There you go.
Call from
Evil Badger.
Evil Badger, can you hold on for just 1 second, sir?
Yes.
I appreciate it. Kerry Gold knows. Did anyone else watch the move Texas and Alabama from 6 and 7 to top 4 over other teams? It will happen again. Just tell the SEC, hell no. Thank you, Kerry Gold knows. I appreciate it. I appreciate the super chat. And again, your incredible generosity to the show, helping us keep the lights on. And again, I still think the SEC is the best football conference in the country. But things are a little different right now. There's more equality on the top level because of NIL and all these other things that are going on. But I'm not railing against the SEC. I'm railing against this anger that ESPN and the SEC has. Because I think at least the playoff rankings are reasonable, even if you don't agree. Don Scruggs, what's the Golden Gophers record versus Georgia? What's the record against Georgia? I don't know. I do know this. The Golden Gophers are 1-0 against Alabama and 1-0 against Auburn. But I don't know it is. And I'm not even saying bring on Georgia. Although last week I was saying bring on Bama. Thank goodness that's not going to happen. But I'm saying bring on Mississippi State. Bring on Vanderbilt, baby. Let's go. Ryan Willie, the Evil Badger. The floor is yours.
Hi, Greg. So, would Minnesota be afraid of Bama?
Hey, hold on, Ryan Willie. Ron.
Okay.
Ron, this is a college football YouTube channel, a Rebel Outpost. We talk college football. We don't talk politics unless it has something to do with college football. So please, is a warning. We don't want politics is not part of this YouTube channel. Thank you for coming on in, though. Appreciate it. Evil Badger, the floor is yours. I apologize for breaking in on you.
So, would Minnesota be afraid of Alabama?
Yes. Yeah, but I did not call out Alabama. If the SEC and the Big Ten does the scheduling agreement, I will make sure I will communicate to the Big Ten offices. I will slide a manila envelope into Rosemont, Illinois corporate offices. And I will make sure that the Golden Gophers will be matched up with the Commodores. The Golden Gophers will be matched up with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. We won't be matched up with Georgia. We won't be matched up with Alabama. I will make sure of that. But go ahead, sir.
So I agree with pretty much what Moen said. before my call. Because the SEC, I think, is afraid of a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, because then they might find out what conference is the best conference in America right now. So, and I think whatever happens, ESPN and the SEC are gonna just make a mess out of the college football playoff rankings, and they're going to try to get as many teams as they can by hook or crook in the playoff, because they don't want to lose all that money.
All righty, sir. All right, I think some people agree with you, some people don't, but I understand what you're saying, sir.
And I absolutely hate ESPN and SEC.
Well, I think most Badger fans do. I think most Badger fans do.
All right. Well, that's all I have.
You got it, buddy. Appreciate the call, sir.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right. Bye.
I have said it on every live. Anytime I'm asked the question, it has been the same answer. Even today, I believe the SEC is the best football conference in the country. But I don't believe at this point in time they have shown by the eye test or deserved by the resume a fifth team into the playoffs. That might change. My beloved Golden Gophers might beat Penn State.
Call from
Rick.
Rick, hold on one second. I'm about to go on a roll here. Hold on one second. My beloved Golden Gophers could beat Penn State. Indiana could lose to Ohio State by 40 points, and then somehow a miracle happens and the Boilermakers beat Indiana. BYU might lose a couple of games. The whole thing might blow up and you get 5 SEC teams in the playoffs, maybe even 6. But I'm talking about right now, looking at the playoffs, looking at the rankings. I don't think it's an incredible travesty like Greenberg and, all of them. Nobody challenged each other. They all walked in unison. They all talked in unison. Right after the other. Oh my goodness, they blew at the play. I don't see it. I don't think it's a travesty that Georgia's sitting at 12, and if they win out, they're going to get to the playoffs. Just so happens Tennessee's probably going to go out. I don't see 5. I don't think that, look, if Texas A&M beats Texas at the end of the season, look at Texas's resume. I don't see the SEC team. I don't think the SEC is going to get 5. I don't think they should get 5 teams. And I still believe they're the best football conference in the country. Go ahead, caller. The floor is yours.
Oh, well, thanks for taking my call, Rick.
Appreciate it.
I got to watch your podcast, your Monday on yesterday, and I was, I was taken back by the North Carolina news, and it reminded me of a phone call I made to you about I want to say 6 weeks ago, and I said I just had one question, and the question was, perhaps you remember it, what does North Carolina want? Because you can't get what you want until you know what you want.
Yeah.
And after hearing the podcast on Monday, I think they're a lot closer to knowing what they want.
I think you're correct. I think In fact, I've gotten more information. I've had people reach out to me a couple different ways. North Carolina basically wants what Brett Yormark wants, what the rest of the Big 12 teams want, what Florida State wants. They want to have an option to tap into all that money that's sitting on the sidelines. That's what they want. They want to bet on themselves. That's what they want. And they can't do it in this current ACC. At least it doesn't look like it. Now maybe somehow everybody gets on the same page and they tap into that money on the outside, and the conference does not dissolve. Maybe that happens, but probably not. It sounds like North Carolina wants exactly what a whole lot of other people want. A whole lot of people are getting a whole lot of phone calls from that big money sitting on the outside of the wall.
But do they also want to use that to be able to negotiate an indoor into the Big Ten or the SEC?
Well, but currently there isn't. There just isn't a way to get there.
Well, I'm talking cloak and dagger, where perhaps they're using that private equity approach.
Maybe we haven't heard that though. Yeah,
to get the conference to dissolve in order to go where they want and get what they want.
But the only way you can get the conference to dissolve, the only way you can get the 10 votes, if those 10 schools are binded together. At least that's what we've been told. Like it's not like you get 10 votes for everybody to scatter. Some of those schools would want some commitment for their vote to dissolve the conference. Else you're not getting a vote.
Okay, and maybe they can get that.
Yeah. Far as I know, this is not a play for North Carolina to get to the Big Ten or the SEC. This is a play of something else because they know they can't get there right now. If the Big Ten and the SEC does a scheduling agreement, that moat gets deeper and wider. They're more. The SEC and the Big Ten are more on an island. And they're on the island longer because if they do get that scheduling agreement, this is an if, then their current media agreement with ESPN and Fox are going to be longer. It's going to get lengthened. And now it's going to be even harder to cross that moat. And North Carolina is eyeing all that. And we're told that North Carolina is eyeing what Brett Yormark is trying to accomplish over there in Big 12 country, and they're afraid that they're going to pull it off, and the ACC is still going to be handcuffed to where they can't bet on themselves, and that's going to put them a couple steps behind the Big 12, and so the only way out is a possible dissolution of the conference. As crazy as it sounds, that is at least being definitely it's out there.
Thanks for the great explanation.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
I appreciate it. Thank you, buddy. Thank you. Great call. Mr. Hoosier. Mr. Hoosier. He's feeling a lot of excitement. He's feeling a lot of pressure. The next 3 weeks will work itself out. It will for the most part. but my goodness, the propaganda, the pressure is being put on right now. Right now. That's what we're talking about. I mean, go ahead after this live show. Go back and watch Mike Greenberg, Paul Finebaum. Go watch them all. Go watch Josh Pate. And again, I'm not disagreeing with them. The SEC is the best football conference in the country. But I disagree in thinking that Georgia at 12, Texas A&M at 15, LSU at 23rd, South Carolina at 21, LSU at 22. I don't think any of that is out of line. I don't think any of that is out of line. Not one of it, in my opinion. I don't think you have to put Indiana on at full blast today, or BYU, or Penn State, or Notre Dame. Those are the four schools that this ESPN machine is putting on full blast. Those four teams. I'm not saying it's like other people are saying it's a coordinated effort. I just think they don't really look at anything other than their own product, in my opinion. Ricky Tungate, I appreciate. I don't think it's anything nefarious right now. I don't. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe I'm being stupid for not believing the conspiracy of a coordinated effort. I just think, like, Paul Finebaum has no idea. He has no idea that Penn State defeated USC, that defeated LSU. He doesn't put the SEC teams under the microscope. Only the teams that are in front of the SEC teams do they put under the microscope, in my opinion. Thank you, Ricky Tungate. I do appreciate it. Appreciate your generosity once again. 1939 national champion. If SMU gets in over Texas or Texas A&M, then the playoff is a joke. They're not going to, if SMU wins the ACC championship game, of course they're going to get in. But if SMU loses, that's going to be their second loss, and they're not going to get a hit. They're not going to get in ahead of Texas, but they're going to get ahead of Texas, and they're going to be ranked ahead of Texas A&M if Texas A&M loses again.
From
Chef Maul.
Chef Maul, the floor is yours. Thanks for calling, sir.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Funny, last time I spoke to you, I said that the Big 12 and the ACC probably need to try to get 2 and let these other big conferences get 4, maybe go to 16.
Yeah.
And it's funny that, so I have one or two thoughts. Is this either the propaganda that's being pushed right now, is this a push for either to add more teams? Do you see this being a possible push for the semifinals within the season? Do you think that could lead to that, the more spots?
I don't
Or
think.
do you think?
Yeah. I think there's going to be a push for a college football playoff expansion to 14. It's already written in, by the way. It's already written in. It's already been okayed by ESPN. If they go above 14, then they have to rip everything up and go through it all again. The 14-team format has been okayed by ESPN. The money is there if they decide to go to 14. So I think, could that be a push for that? Yeah. But I really think this is a push to say, look, we should get at least 5 teams in there. And if not, then we might just walk away from this whole, when you got Brett McMurphy writing it in that type of language, yeah. They are pissed. The SEC really thinks that they should be getting at least 5, and if not 5, then we might have to look at different alternatives.
It's weird because we all watch these games. Georgia might have lost to Florida if Lagway doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And when you talk about comparing resumes, Miami, for example, went to the Swamp and beat UF handily. Like how you said, Penn State beats USC. Yeah. LSU doesn't beat USC. So we have to make the games that we actually see have to matter. And it's like the 15 are asking for. It's not a team, like you said, that should be left out. That's being shortchanged. They just haven't done their part. No one told Georgia to barely beat Kentucky. No one told Alabama to lose to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Those are results that happen. And the other question I have for you, and then I'll let you go, is with the SEC, with these multiple 2-loss teams, how will, if two teams got to play in the championship game, if there's multiple 2-loss teams,
okay,
how will the committee look at that loss if they played the extra game? How do you think that's going to weigh versus a team that didn't make it, but you're sitting there 10-2?
Yeah, that is a great question. What happens to the SEC team that loses in the conference championship game and gets their 3rd loss? That is a great question.
Man, you could just package that up if you don't have an answer now, man. You could package that one up and we can talk about it another day.
Yeah, let's package that up.
That's such a deep question. Because how do you punish a team for going to the championship versus staying home? And that's why I feel like the conference games need to be in. They need to do something more definitive in terms of creating these spots that makes the season matter, which it is, but also having these games matter down the stretch, but not punishing a team for playing in a championship game. Because I feel like that's essentially what's going to happen.
And I think that's where the automatic qualifiers come in, right?
Right.
I think the conference championship game or the conference tournament, being 4 teams, that is a way for you to determine your champion and potential bye in the playoffs. But the teams that are, if you're a conference of 4 automatic qualifiers, your championship game isn't going to hurt the team that loses it. That is a great question. Great question on the SEC team. If they lose, that's their 3rd. That's a great question. We're going to have to get into that our next live show. I will tell you this. I will say this. It's not far-fetched that the SEC is going to end up with 7. Is it 7 teams with 2 losses, or is it 8?
I think it's 7 at this point, because a lot of teams don't play each other outside of this matchup. Tennessee, Georgia, and the
Texas A&M.
The year.
Yeah.
The only other 2 teams that play that are ranked is Missouri and South Carolina, which are really, not even in that top 5.
Yeah, and South Carolina has 3 conference losses. Okay, so
a ranked opponent.
I think there can be, there is a chance of, I don't know. What I've heard, now I forgot what I've heard.
I heard of something of 5 teams could finish with 2 losses potentially.
Well, I heard it was like 7, and then if Texas A&M beats Texas, and if Texas A&M beats Texas and Georgia beats Tennessee,
everyone has 2 losses, and A&M would have only 1 conference loss.
What was that?
I said in that scenario, Texas A&M would only have 1 conference loss, but they would have 2 losses overall because they have the Notre Dame loss.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. We're done going down rabbit holes. Great question though on the 3rd loss SEC team. Whew, if they get punished and some other 2-loss SEC team that finish ahead of them or finish behind them, but then they lose the championship game, does that team that loses the championship game fall behind the team that was behind them before the championship game? So we'll talk about that on another day.
For sure. Thank you, Greg.
Appreciate it, my man. Great call. Excellent call. A lot of great calls today. Holy smokes. I am behind. People are being so generous. Ryan Thomas, newsflash programs and conferences will have their ups and downs. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you so very much. Michael Newton. ESPN is trying to justify a 3-loss SEC team over Penn State or Indiana. They want Bama, Ole Miss, Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, or Texas A&M in the playoffs. 1 Big 12, 1 ACC, 3 Big 10, 1 G5, 5 SEC, and Notre Dame. Boy, it looks like it, don't it, Michael Newton? It looks like it. Again, shame on me for being so surprised this morning on the level of vitriol, on the level of all of ESPN, or not even all of ESPN, other people too. Josh Pate and everything. Wow. It's going to get nasty. It's going to get nasty. Michael Newton, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate your generosity. I appreciate you coming on in today. Thank you so much for helping us keep the lights on here at College Football's Peak Around the Corner. Stormy Cyclone. Good afternoon, everyone. ESPN and SEC are getting exposed, and they don't like it. Thank you, Mr. Cyclone. Stormy Cyclone, thank you for your super chat. I do appreciate your generosity. Wow. Man, let me check on something here. Woo! If college sports on Sirius XM, if Matt Rule didn't make a move to bring in Dana Holgerson as their offensive coordinator, the odds of Dylan Raiola not being here next season goes up dramatically. They had to do something. Robin Washut tells ESPN Schickenbeek and Heron about the Huskers hiring Dana Holgerson and how it could keep their star quarterback at Nebraska. My goodness. Hopefully for Nebraska, they can go to USC in the Coliseum, win their 6th game, and go to a bowl game. Hopefully Dylan Raiola gets confidence under Dana Holgerson, or at least sees some improvement. This was always a situation in where Nebraska's old line is not any good. They're old. They're going to be moved out after this year. Nebraska's wide receiver group, pretty weak. Their running back room, not all that good, but the old line is terrible. Terrible. So Dylan Raiola doesn't have receivers that can get separation. He's getting hit. They do not focus on the running game, as they should. But now Dana Holgerson's in there, and I like Dana. I think it was a great move by Nebraska. A great move by Matt Rule. But Dylan Raiola, who switched to, I don't know, how many different high schools? 4? How many different commitments did he have? Georgia was one. There was a bunch of other ones as well. Dylan Raiola's first year at Nebraska has not gone the way they thought at Lincoln. Has not gone the way they thought Dylan Raiola. Let's see what happens. Drama in Lincoln. Drama in Lincoln. Raiola hates football. He says he prefers hockey, Mr. Don Scruggs. They are worried in Lincoln. They cannot lose. They cannot lose Dylan Raiola. Raiola to Minnesota hockey. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. All right. We've been on the air for 2 hours and 30 seconds. I think we're going to close it up. I want to thank everybody for for coming on in. Kerry Gold knows, let the SEC go play with themselves in more than one way. Sick of the bias. Thank you, Kerry Gold knows. Thank you for your super chat. Appreciate your generosity throughout our program today and throughout the last months. Appreciate it, Mr. Seminoles. Thank you, Stormy Cyclones, Michael Newton, Mr. Hoosier Tungate, Ryan Thomas, the Evil Badger, Ryan Willie. Thank you for your donations. Thank you for the comments in the comments section and the great phone calls once again from the PATC community. Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow we're going to be doing our picks against the spread. Is Greg the Gold going to show up? We're going to have to go through the results of last week. They were not good for me. They were not good for you. The geniuses that make up the PATC community. We did not have a good week last week, just like every other week this season. Just like every other week this season, it's been horrific. It's been embarrassing. It would be embarrassing, except that I had a bad 2023, a bad 2022. So doing a bad 2024 against the spread just shows you the consistency that it takes to be the mayor of Loserville City. So tomorrow we're going to be making our picks against the spread. I hope you join us. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about the games that are coming up this weekend. And if there's anything else that is stirring the pot here at college football's peak around the corner. Again, I'm just going to warn you. You better subscribe to our channel because the first half of 2025, I cannot promise you a rose garden. My crystal ball cracked years ago, but we're going to continue to do the best we can at giving you a peek around the corner. This is your peak. The first half of 2025 is going to be crazy. So buckle up, brace for impact. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.